Welcome back into Steelers Latest, your daily spot for all news and information related to your Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content to stay up to date with everything Steelers. But let's get this show rolling. As PFF released its quarterback starters rankings, and not so shockingly, Steelers come second to last as Mason Rudolph graded the 31st best starter in the league so far. The only one that's behind him is Tyler Sowell of the New Orleans Saints, as he is now going to be forced to start there after Derek Carr's retirement, injury, then retirement. But I could make the argument that it's more like 26. I could argue easily Mason Rudolph is better than Anthony Richardson. I think Rudolph has shown better flashes in the past than Richardson really has. I know Richardson has a couple game-winning drives, but just that four-game stretch the Mason had with the Steelers to end the year 2 years ago is better than any four-game stretch you can look at that Anthony Richardson has. Joe Flacco, I think I'd also say Mason Rudolph is a little better than. I'm a little more hesitant on this one because Flacco is back with the Browns, and somehow him and Kevin Stefanski always seem to work out pretty well. But I do feel pretty confident in Mason Rudolph being a just more quality over the year than someone like Joe Flacco. I also would say Justin Fields at 29 or at 28. No, Mason Rudolph has had better flashes than Fields has too. I know more limited reps, but Justin Fields, nothing really too special so far in his career. His best stretch did come with us last year also. So, and then Russell Wilson and Sam Darnold. I know those two are more kind of established guys, but there's questions with Sam Darnold. Was it just being in Minnesota last year? And with Russell Wilson, I mean, he's going to provide solid seasons, but nothing too great. He's a little more safe. But I also think if you sign Rodgers, we could jump all the way up to like 19th in the rankings here at quarterback, just because the next like seven guys are all either first year rookies, second year players, or third year players. You got Cam Ward, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Bryce Young, and Bo Nix. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say Rodgers should still be better than all of those young quarterbacks. I know one or two of these guys are probably going to take a step forward this year and advance their name probably into the top 15 quarterbacks, but I'd more than likely say Rodgers is better than most of the younger guys out there right now just because of experience, because he's seen every coverage before. He should be better than most. But that's just what I'm arguing. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do we actually have the second worst quarterback starter right now with Mason Rudolph? Or is he better than a couple of those guys like Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and Sam Darnold? Let me know in the comment section below. But let's keep this moving on the quarterback topic. As Will Howard went on the Up and Adams show recently, and he talked about his first interactions with the good old Mike T, or as some of you call him, Mediocre Mike, you rude people out there. But he revealed most of this first meeting. The first thing I heard was that he was basically taken aback by the president, being like, "Damn, that's Mike Tomlin right there." Exactly how most people would react. He said it's because Mike Tomlin's been the longest tenured coach in the league. He's been basically the rock of the league, coaching wise, staying with one team. Him and I think John Harbaugh now are both the two longest tenured coaches. But didn't share anything too new. But it was cool to hear Will Howard talk about how cool and down to earth someone like Mike Tomlin is, and how genuine of a dude he can be, and how his character never wavers. And that's why all these players buy into the Mike Tomlin way. I don't think the message ever runs stale because Mike Tomlin is such he's just always the same person. You're never going to get a different Mike Tomlin. And that's something you can always rely on as a player. Someone so steady, captaining the ship is always a nice rock to be able to lean on during the rough times. And I mean, Tomlin also then recently commented on Will Howard, and Tomlin said that he's just doing great, but they haven't really reached the evaluation part of the season yet or the off season yet. This is more just trying to get to know the rookie players. But from what it's hearing, the relationship is forming, and that's what we like to hear as fans. But let's move on to another PFF grade on the defensive side of the ball. Some good news this time. Ranked the best defensive line unit in the league, and I think I said this a couple days ago, a couple videos ago, when I'm talking about every position group, that the defensive front is as solid as it gets. And I think it's pretty clear out of the league. We have the best mix of you see the veteran presence and then the youth coming up behind everyone. I think it's a beautiful mix of both veteran and youth presence. You got players like Watt, Hayward, and Highsmith, all going to be mentors to the future generation. Herbig, Sawyer, Harmon, and Black. This is going to be the superior unit for a while here in Pittsburgh, I do think. I think our defensive line is what's going to win us games at this point. Our offense is still going to struggle, it feels like, next year. So it's going to really heavily rely on our defense putting together solid performances once again. And that all starts up front. If you can get pressure with the big boys up front, trust me, Watt, Hayward, Highsmith, and I think Harmon are going to get a lot of pressures this year. Wouldn't be surprised if we led the league in sacks once again. I'd love to see that. All Steelers fans would love to see that. Let's move on to some trade possibilities. But we'd love to hear that we got the best defensive line unit in the league. But so the trade possibilities. Chris Olave, we already know. There's already been statements about how the Steelers and Browns reached out earlier in the offseason to try to acquire Chris Olave. This is before Derek Carr went down with an injury and then retired. Uh, I think he'd be a great addition at wide receiver too. Of course, he's on the final year of his contract. That was the big thing with Pickens. We weren't going to pay him anyways. That's what I mentioned about bringing in Alec Pierce. Wouldn't even want him here because he's on the final year. But that's also because he doesn't have the potential that Olave has. Olave is coming off of a down year with 32 receptions for only 400 yards and one touchdown. But I think you can see in the previous 2 years, both 70 to 80 catch seasons, over 1,000 yards. You see the potential is really there to be a top guy in this league. He just didn't really have the greatest quarterback play in New Orleans. Now coming to Pittsburgh, we're talking about quarterback play. Like, come on, I shouldn't even mention it knowing how the Steelers quarterback play has been. But hopefully it's a little better this year. And hopefully he can get back on that pace if we were to bring him in. Of course, you'd have to kind of entice him, the Saints, a little bit more. I think you can talk to them a little bit more. They're more interested in the tanking for Arch Manning, I feel like, at this point than anything. So maybe dumping one of their better wide receivers isn't that bad of idea if they are trying to tank. So I'd be willing to toss him a second round pick next year and maybe a fifth or a sixth-round pick to make that deal real enticing. The Cowboys were able to get George Pickens for a third rounder, so I think a second rounder is fair enough for someone like Chris Olave. And also, I wouldn't mind trading someone with like Alex Highsmith. I think they need edge rushers, so that could benefit them really well while giving us a wide receiver too. And we have Nick Herbig that I think could fill in for Alex Highsmith well, as we saw last year when Highsmith was down with injury. So that's my thoughts of the Chris Olave trade. It'd be very interesting to see for us Steelers fans. That would give us a wide receiver too. We definitely could rely on. One, DK Metcalf is getting triple teamed after we throw him the ball 5 straight plays, because right now that's looking like the direction the offense might be going when it comes to passing offense compared to our run offense. I think our run offense is pretty set right now. We just would like to see one more weapon added at the wide receiver group after trading away George Pickens. But that has been it from Steelers Latest. I've been your host, Cole Denis, and I will see you Monday.